Basically, these spores, they are produced less frequently than the asexual spores, and their number is less, quite lesser than the asexual spores. And these presence of these spores, they characterize the fungi and their different phylums. So mostly they are formed by the fusion of nuclei from two opposite uh, strains of the same species of fungus. So it's not like male and female, it's like the fusion of the two different hypha. So two parents or two hypha, parent hypha, they are involved. So basically, there are different fungi, and we can divide them into three basic groups: Zygomycota, Ascomycota, and Basidiomycota. And there is another group which is known as Deutromycota, but in that Deutromycota, sexual spores, they are not found. So that is a separate group. But on the basis of the sexual spores, these three prevalent groups are there, and any mold and can be divided into these three or four groups. Zygomycota, they are also called as conjugation fungi because in this group, the members, the two different members, they conjugate themselves, or their hypha, they conjugate themselves, and at the site of their conjugation, a spore is formed. And they are saprophytic in nature without septa. And if they don't have septa, so they have multinuclei or multinucleated hypha. As you can see that their both mode of reproduction, they are displayed in the diagram, and this is how zygospore is formed, and this is how conjugation between the two hypha it occurs, and it forms this structure which is known as the zygospore. Okay, whenever the two hypha they are fused, the zygospore is formed, and in this zygospore, what happens? The zygospore, basically it's a binucleated structure. It's a structure that receive nuclei from both the hypha. So in some groups, what happens just after the fusion of their hypha, which is called as the plasmogamy, as you can, yes. So positive negative represents basically the two different hypha. So when they are fused, so first their hypha and their cytoplasm, it gets fused, so which is called as plasmogamy. Okay, in some groups like in Zygomycota, after the plasmogamy, this spore is formed, and it leads to the fusion of the nuclei as well, which is called as the karyogamy. So karyogamy is the nucleus fusion of the nuclei, and whenever the nuclei they get fused, the first division which occurs after the formation of a diploid nucleus, फर्स्ट जो डिवीजन होती है दैट इज कॉल्ड एज मियोसिस. तो ये जो सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन है, इसमें तीन स्टेजेस जो है इम्पोर्टेंट है: फ्यूजन ऑफ द हाइफा, देन प्लाज्मोगेमी. From this zygospore, what happens? A sporangium is formed, and from this sporangium, a lot of spores they are formed. So basically, this is the structure which is the sexual reproductive structure, and from this is the structure which is moving towards the asexual reproduction. Another group is the Ascomycota, और एस्कोमाइकोटा को स्टैक फंजाई भी कहते हैं, क्योंकि एस्कोमाइकोटा में जो स्पोर्स होते हैं वो एक थैलस में बनते हैं, एक बैग लाइक स्ट्रक्चर में ही डेवलप होते हैं, एंड दैट इज कॉल्ड एज एस्कस। तो इसी वजह से उसको सैक फंजाई भी कहते हैं या एस्कोमाइकोटा भी कहते हैं। ठीक है, तो ये एस्कोस्पोर्स जो हैं दे आर प्रोड्यूस्ड इन अ sac like structure which is called an ascus. This side represents the asexual reproduction. So as you can see in the two hypha whenever they are fused, so first plasmogamy happens, and then they establish themselves. They do not immediately form a spore, while at some later stages of the cycle they have to be fused. ठीक है, because cycle should move on. ठीक है, but unlike Zygomycota, they are not immediately fused after plasmogamy, right? So then karyogamy happens, and then meiosis, and then mitosis, and then these are the cell divisions to form the ascospores, and this structure is called as the ascus, in which these spores are produced, and whenever this is ruptured, ascospores are released, and each ascospore germinates a new hypha, and then that hypha then generates conidiophore, and then from that conidiophore conidia forms. This cycle, it rotates itself. So the differentiating stage in this character or in this group is the formation of the ascospores in the specialized structures which are called as ascus. Then we have Basidiomycota. तो Basidiomycota को क्लब फंजाई भी कहते हैं, बिकॉज ये जिस स्ट्रक्चर में बनते हैं, ये डब फंजाई लिखा हुआ है बट इट इज एक्चुअली द क्लब फंजाई. So they possess septate hypha, and they usually one of the remarkable member is the mushrooms. So they form some structures which are club shaped, in which the spores are produced. So that's why they are called as club fungi. And वो जो club shaped structure है जिसमें ये spores produce होते हैं उसको basidium कहते हैं. And usually एक basidium से 4 basidiospores they are generated, and then from those basidiospores वो germinate होते हैं, and then asexual life cycle चलती है, उससे कोनिडिया बनते हैं. तो ये दोनों साइकिल साथ साथ चल रही होती हैं. तो हम ये देखेंगे किसकी लाइफ साइकिल. as you can see, and the two of vegetative mycelia, they transform themselves as a partner for sexual reproduction, and then they form this structure which is called as the fruiting body. And in that structure, as you can see, ये जो इसकी सरफेस पर जो जिससे बना हुआ है बेसिकली हाइपल स्ट्रक्चर ही है, बट दिस इज कॉल्ड एज द बेसिडियम. और इन दैट केस एज यू कैन सी, इसका एक सेक्शन लेके आपको यहाँ दिखाया है कि किस तरह से बेसिडियम्स, ये वाला स्ट्रक्चर जो है बेसिकली ये बेसिडियम है, इसके अंदर बेसिडियोस्पोर्स जो है वो डेवलप हुआ है. एंड ये किस तरह से फिर सेपरेट होते हैं. हर बेसिडियम जो है वो बिल्कुल कॉर्नर पे जाके स्टिक कर जाता है, और ये प्रोजेक्शंस यहाँ से निकलती हैं बिल्कुल एलोंगेटेड, और उसके बाद यहाँ से जो है इसको सेप्टा डेवलप हो जाता है. तो ये जो स्पोर है ये सेपरेट हो जाता है. ठीक है, एज यू कैन सी दीज बेसिडियम बेसिडियोस्पोर्स दे आर डिस्चार्ज. इसमें ये वाली जो प्रोजेक्शन है फिंगर लाइक, इसको स्टेरिगमेटा कहते हैं, जो डेवलप होती है एट द टिप ऑफ अ बेसिडियम, स्टेरिगमेटा. ठीक है, so then each basidiospore then germinates itself into a new hypha और उससे फिर asexual life cycle चलना शुरू हो जाता। ठीक है जी, तो ये था जी बेसिडियोमाइकोटा। तो ये अगर इस तरह का स्ट्रक्चर हो बेसिडियम की डेवलपमेंट और फ्रूटिंग बॉडीज की प्रेजेंस ये इंडिकेट करती है कि ये बेसिडियोमाइकोटा का मेंबर। बेटा ये ऑफ करें इसको, सर म्यूट करें सबको। There are two terms used for fungi, telomorph, and they display both types of spores, sexual spores and asexual spores. Whereas anamorphs are those types which have lost the ability to reproduce sexually. So there are some ascomycetes which are called as anamorphs because they have lost their ability to produce sexual spores. So it is assumed that it is because of a mutation in a telomorph that leads to the formation of, or you can say development of a strain which lost the ability to reproduce sexually and turning it into the anamorph. So penicillium is that example of anamorph that arose from a mutation in a telomorph. There is another group which is known as Deutromycota. In that group, those species, fungal species, they are placed which display all the fungal characters, but no sexual reproductive stages are found. Or so you can say they are those strains in which sexual cycle had not been observed. It was a sort of holding category. Previously it was the holding category कि जिसमें ये observed नहीं होती sexual cycles जिस भी newly discovered strain में, तो उसको Deutromycota में add कर देते हैं. But now we have a lot of genetic methods to identify the strains. So मोस्टली जितने भी मेंबर्स थे ड्यूट्रोमाइकोटा के, उन्होंने उनकी जब राइबोसोमल सीक्वेंसिंग की थी, तो नाउ दे आर क्लासिफाइड इनटू ईदर एस्कोमाइसीट्स और दी बेसिडियोमाइसीट्स. तो ये वो मेंबर्स हैं बेसिकली जो पहले जो है वो डिस्प्ले कर रहे थे properties, reproductive properties, both reproductive properties, but because of the evolution and because of the mutations, they have lost their ability to reproduce sexually, and now their sexual stages they are not reported. Still this group exists because there are few members of fungi जिसमें reported ही नहीं है और उनका 16 ये उनका जो राइबोसोमल सीक्वेंस है वो भी किसी से मैच नहीं हो रहा, तो they are still holding their places in this group ड्यूट्रोमाइकोटा. बट मोस्टली मैंने आपको बताया कि ये ग्रुप जो है इसके जो मेंबर्स हैं उनको अब डिस्प्लेस कर दिया गया फ्रॉम ड्यूट्रोमाइकोटा टू अदर ग्रुप्स बेस्ड ऑन देयर राइबोसोमल सीक्वेंसिंग.